back to the global warming issue. I know nobody likes to talk about it. There are some solutions that have been presented that could be in play so much earlier than what is anticipated if only people would get their heads on straight. And so, look, here's the thing. I tend to believe that the earth is warming. Now, is it because of humans breathing carbon dioxide? I don't really think that that's the main problem. I think the main problem is going to be major plants and corporations making methane gas, not plants like that grow, plants as in power plants. And methane gas is 10 to 25 times worse than carbon dioxide. So, of course, all the opportunists in the world are coming in with Agenda 21 and saying, live in a tiny box. And, of course, they're saying, pay to breathe. You know, I started writing this sci-fi novel that I don't know if I'll ever finish, but part of it is that people actually literally have limited breaths. And so they have these, like, calorie monitors on them, and they have to get permission to exercise, or that exercise has to be prescribed, just like vitamins are trying to be prescribed now. I know I'm a total nutcase, but I imagine these dystopian futures that are pretty scary. And so anyway, I don't think people are the problem, not the mass population of people. If anything, it's these 1% people that just keep thinking about making money as usual. But there's this thing called helium-3, and I don't know if you've heard about it. Like, it's part of fusion, okay, the fusion process. Right now, the nuclear power plants that are causing all this problem are fission power plants, and then coal power plants are causing a lot of pollution, like I talked about in the last video, methane, which is way worse than carbon dioxide, okay, breathed by people, especially third world people, and it's even American people, like burning air conditioners. It's nothing compared to the methane that's being released from these power plants, and of course through feeding cows the wrong kind of food, like corn or like cows when they should be fed grass. That's also a major cause of methane. And then, of course, the oceans, as a result of the first two methanes, the oceans are releasing methane and the glaciers are releasing methane, and it's this snowball. It's very scary. You have to consider this. I mean, you can't just ignore this. Now, I'm not saying that I'm pro Agenda 21. Of course not. I'm a libertarian. I believe in individual rights. And I, like I said, don't think that individuals are the major problem. Now, let's just get over that for a second and just hypothesize, like objective scientists, okay, and say that this warming is really occurring and we want to use a cleaner form of energy. We just are going to just humor me for a minute, okay? Clean energy. Let's just say that it will make a difference and it won't infringe on people's liberties, okay? I'm not saying sell carbon credits. I'm saying a good old-fashioned entrepreneurial American technology company opening a fusion plant, using helium-3, providing clean energy, and all that good stuff. That's what I'm talking about, for lots of people, to burn more air conditioners, okay? Now, this is another thing I have to give my dad credit for. I should have included this in the last video, but it was a lot of information, and my dad basically wants to save the Earth from global warming because why? He was trained by the Air Force in meteorology, and he's a scientist. He's got a psychology degree, and he's just wants to save the Earth. And he's convinced the global warming is happening. I personally believe that the solar flares have a lot also to do with it besides the methane, and not so much, you know, the people breathing and making babies as it is the solar flares, the coal power plants, the cows that are eating the wrong kind of foods because of industrial situations, and then the compounds of those are making more methane released from the earth. Back to my point. There is a future in play with helium-3. Now, helium-3 is not radioactive, okay? Helium-3 is helium, and it has 2 protons and 1 neutron instead of 2 protons and 2 neutrons like normal helium. Well, so what happens is helium-3 can be used for fusion, and it can be used for a lot cleaner, supposedly, than all these other types of reactors, okay? Now, where does helium-3 come from? Well, as ironically enough, nuclear reactors, when something goes wrong, helium-3 gets released, but not directly. It gets released really tritium, and then tritium, after it decays, becomes helium-3. So tritium is radioactive and bad, but then helium-3 is like after those energy has settled down then it becomes helium-3, when the decaying is done, when the radioactive portion is over. It also has been made by like radiating lithium-6. I'm not crazy about that. I don't think we need to add more radiating craziness to the Earth, okay? But there's a ton of it on the moon. A ton of helium-3 on the moon. Now, we just sent the Mars robot out, and it went to Mars and collected rocks and brought it back. So here's the theory that's been posited by several scientists, and of course my father is all about this, that we go to the moon and we harvest the helium-3 and we bring it back for nuclear fusion. Now, there's a lot of information that you can find on this on the web. I instantly asked my dad, don't you think this is going to start World War III? People are going to go and they're going to start fighting over the moon. And he seems to think that if you go and you lay your claim and you have a certain amount of acreage around that claim and you go to that area, then another country can go to another area and they can harvest it or whatever, just like people did with the gold rush. They go and they lay down their stake and that's their land. I think that's a possibility. It may cause some treaties. It may cause some like world agreement going on because it's outside of our world. So I think at that point it is important for people in this world to come to an agreement. I'm not really pro-world government. I love the sovereignty of our nation. But when it comes to going to outer space and the moon that we all share, I do think that that is probably a reasonable time, a reasonable reason for consulting the UN or whatever. Now, so say we can go to there and get the helium-3, get what we need, and bring it back. How in the world does it work? Well, there's a lot of ways that it works. You can do helium-3 plus helium-3, or you can do helium-3 plus tritium, but basically the helium-3 plus helium-3, heating it up a whole lot, it just seems to work. And then I think the byproduct of it is actually hydrogen, or just it's just a proton. And so it's not like these nuclear fission that split things up and it causes all kinds of problems. This is just a proton, and protons can be directly converted to electricity. So the irony is the non-efficiency of it can be turned into more efficiency. So helium-3 seems really cool. I think it's something that we need to start thinking about. I think that if you're still on the side of there is no such thing as global warming, carbon credits are a scam, then I get what you're saying, but you at least have to look at the information coming out of NASA and the solar flare and the 12-year cycle. Look at the fact that, here's an argument that you may not consider. It's not just Earth that's heating up right now, it's other planets as well in our solar system because of the sun and because of the sun's cycle. No, the sun's not about to explode. I think that's about 4 million years down the road, but it is heating up right now in 2012. Hopefully in the next 6 years as it goes down through its solar flare cycle, the Earth may cool back down a bit. Also, something to consider, we are in the process right now of shifting our magnetic poles. And what that means is that our magnetic poles on the entire Earth are going to flip. Now, from what I've read and seen through documentaries and heard coming out of NASA, that can take up to 100,000 years to happen. It's not like the 2012 people who are like, oh, the world's gonna end, everything's gonna die. No, I don't really think that's the case, but we are in a place right now where our magnetic field is weakening. The sun is at the peak of a 12-year cycle of solar flares, so you have to consider that probability. Now, this is where you get into the whole thing where I think that's what geoengineers are secretly trying to save us from, but it's not up to them to make decisions for us. I think that we need to all speak honestly about these issues, and we need to look around the profit-making distractions like carbon credits and Agenda 21 and look at what's really going on with real science. Okay, and I think that the real science is showing that our field is weakening, the sun is heating up. Although the sun part is going to get better, the field weakening is not. So we're still going to be susceptible to the occasional flares and heat through that. And then the methane that we're using mostly from greed, it's not carbon, it's not individuals breathing, it's the power plants, it's the cows eating the wrong foods. That is going to help perpetuate the problem. So we should try to reduce the warming through especially methane, okay, and then that might get us through the weakening field that's going to happen and that's been happening and that we're dealing with right now. But as of right now, this is the hottest since recorded history. Recorded history is only like, 200 years, and then before that, they can go down in the glaciers and they can deduce from using scientific methods, but it's not like it was recorded at that time what the temperature was. So there could be some flaw there. So the point is, at least over the last couple hundred years, with these cycles, which do occur, this is kind of a hot one. Okay, now helium-3 is not, of course, going to happen this year, 2012. It looks like it's going to be 10 to 20 to 30 years in the future. But there are some companies that are actually considering going to the moon, mining helium-3, which I think is really cool, and coming back down. It makes me want to go back and get my graduate degree in physics so I can get some really cool technology job and help to save the Earth at the same time, and hopefully prevent people from living in little tiny boxes, but instead have us, have unlimited energy. Here's the problem with that, though. While cha-ching, cha-ching goes off in my head, right, because I have plenty of time to get the degree, to get in on that boom, right? Here's the problem. Here's where I come back into reality. There's a freaking mosquito. It's 11 o'clock, and there's a mosquito. Bill Gates! Even the moon will eventually run out of helium-3. Even the moon. We've got to figure something out, people. We have got to figure something out. And that comes to my theory of life, okay? Which is that there are no shortcuts. You can try to go outside of the Earth and mine for helium-3 and bring it back here, but then what? We're going to just build bigger spaceships and try to go farther and farther out? And then what? We're going to steal from some planet that might actually have life on it, or at least have potential to have life on it in the future? We've got to learn to live in balance with our environment. So, yes, I'm bringing myself back to reality here. Let's say global warming's real. Let's say we can go get helium-3. Let's say we can do fusion reactions, okay? And let's say we're going to be okay for a while. That is still going to come to an end. It's still going to come to an end. And what do we do then? Well, I think, personally, we should try to live in harmony with nature. We really should. We should look at the Native Americans and how they lived. They still burnt fires, lots of fires actually. They burnt lots of fires. They probably emitted a lot of carbon. But they also didn't have world-dominating, greedy power plant people taking over and making decisions for their 99%. So where I like this idea of nuclear fusion, I want us to take a step back and not get caught up in science and what we can do, and in the future to allow us to be more extravagant instead. Maybe we should just realize that we can't take all these things with us when we go, and we really just need to focus on leaving something behind for our children.